we are going to dive right in. And so quick little reminder / announcement that I will be closing the beta group for Fitme Community Leader this week. And so if you are interested in participating in that program for your personal development and to help us as a community leader in the Fitme community programs that are coming out next year. Again, these are sort of like our organic stuff that we're already doing. We're just going to be providing some structure and training for community leaders to be able to help lead and learn how to do things in their own community or help us virtually. And really, it's a personal development program for people who are on their own journey, but also want to help other people along the way. And so if that is you, the beta group is closing this week. And so please reach out to me ASAP if you are interested. Otherwise, I think that's it for announcements. We are going to get right into the topic of the week, which is, we haven't talked about this in a while, and I thought it would be good to revisit. And I want to talk about the Fitme values and just values in general. But I thought it would be cool to discuss those as a topic of the week and for us all to kind of think about them and how it plays out for us. Because it's something that we share. Like, these are shared values inside of Fitme. But for me, what values mean, because I've taught values to people both in Fitme, like as a mindset concept, but also in business. I've coached and mentored other businesses where I'm like, well, what are your core values? Most people want to list 100 things that are important to them. Like, I care about family. I care about, wellness. I care about honesty. I care about punctuality. I care about my church. I care about integrity. I care about all these things. And you can have all these things that you care about. But typically our core values are usually just 3 or 4. And figuring out what those are can be a really good exercise, because when we actually have to choose, when we have to prioritize, we end up learning things about ourselves, usually when we're having this sort of like thought. And one of my favorite ways to help people figure out what their personal values are to ask them what gets them the most fired up. Like, what pisses you off? What is something when it happens, you are like, this is unacceptable, and here's why. It feels so wrong because usually that is like the signal around your core values. And so a lot of times when that happens, you can figure out what was violated in that situation. And then you can find out, oh, like, one of my core values is honesty. Like, it really fires me up when someone's dishonest. Like, you can do a whole bunch of other things wrong, but like, don't be dishonest. And you figure out, oh, okay, my core value is this. Or like, hey, this really impacted my family, and I am so pissed because X, Y, and Z, like, this is one of my most important things to me. And then you're like, oh, okay, actually, family is one of my core values. It's one of the most important priorities. Or you're saying like, oh, okay, like this other thing. And so, we actually went through a similar exercise when we were coming up with Fitme's core values. And so I wanted to share, one, what our values are. I'm sure you've heard them before, but I also wanted to give you that perspective, again, from coaching people. Like, how do you discover what your core values are? What are you willing to stand behind? What are you willing to argue and that it is so important. And then tell you that we actually did that exercise to come up with ours. And so there are so many things that are important, right? There are things that are valuable, but we chose these 3 as our core values for a reason. And sharing them with you is important so that you can understand how they'll play out in your personal journey. And so one of our very first value, our Fitme value, is realness. We will present ourselves, our method, our results in a genuine and authentic way. And this will allow for true connection, individual growth, and will disrupt the inauthentic and problematic social media space. And so when you ask me like what made us mad, as a coaching team or as a community in Fitme, one of the things that really felt wrong or off that fired me up were when people, one, either felt like they had to not show up as themselves, like they had to filter, they had to highlight reel, they had to be on point and perfect all the time, or they couldn't show up. That made me angry. I was like, that's not how people actually make progress. People need to be able to show up as who they are, realness, not necessarily like if you want to, be all makeuped up and that's you, be you. If you like never wore a dot of makeup in your life, be you. If you want to dress up in certain ways, be you. Like, but you get to show up as you. If you've had a bad day, you get to show up as you on that bad day. If you have had an amazing day, you can show up as that way. If you're goofy, you get to show up as that way. If you're serious, you get to show up as that way. Like realness at its core means that you get to show up as you, and we want you to do that. We appreciate that because that's how we actually get to connect to each other. One of the things that if we're trying to make significant lifestyle change, connection is at the core. And realness, being able to show up who we are on any given day, bad or good, is essential for that to happen. And so from an individual, how we show up standpoint, that's how realness means for us. We get to show up as ourselves and be accepted as that. And in terms of from a Fitme as a company standpoint, it's very important to me that we present ourselves in a genuine and authentic way. One of the things that we probably have all been familiar with is sort of that, before and after, that's not real, right? Like the picture that makes us think that we should be like something. And we really find out that that's not actually the case, that transformation was 4.5 weeks long. That person lost 25 pounds and then they gained it all back. Right. But then they're presenting it as though that's real transformation. For us, we actually want to emphasize the realness, like the little wins, the things that maybe aren't quite as sexy, but for us are at the core of our lives, or at the core of these changes that we're making. And so one of our values is realness. And I think if you feel like you can't show up as you, I'm telling you today that you can. And we want you to. And your coach wants to know the real you. And the people inside Fitme want to know the real you. And we want to go on that journey together. And if you're having a bad day, you don't have to feel like you can't share that. And if you're having a good day, you don't have to feel like you can't share that. It's not a highlight reel. And so for us, realness is the first core value. That's something that makes us different. And I think, as we've gotten, for those of you that were at the event, I feel like it was such a fun place to get to connect and get to know each other more and get that realness piece. But even if you didn't get to make it to the event, I hope that you're feeling that through your interactions with other people in Fitme and with your coach. And if not, and you're brand new, which we do have a handful of brand new people, we want you to know from the jump, we want you to show up as you are. So realness is our first core value. Our second core value in Fitme is resiliency. And this one came from, spending a lot of time coaching people with strategies that did not hold up for real life. And so you guys have heard sort of the Fitme origin story, and me coming from more of a fitness space, very CrossFit, Olympic weightlifting, performance oriented. And I learned a lot of cool stuff about nutrition. And when we very first started coaching nutrition, and it was just me and Molly and Coach Caitlin, we were very much focused on an approach that was a good, it's a good tool, but it didn't hold up for a lot of people in real life. When real life would happen, there was no foundation. And we realized that in Fitme, one of the things that we're all doing together is creating resiliency. We all have our own different challenges, but the foundation of our healthy habits, how we treat ourselves, how we eat, how we move our bodies, that foundation actually must be resilient. It needs to be able to hold up, even if it looks different in different seasons, right? It's not always going to look the same. But what we wrote for resiliency is we will develop and practice habits in order to succeed in the face of real life trials. And this will create a foundation of physical, emotional, and community strength. And so, sometimes resiliency, when I think about what does that even mean? I think about a flower that gets stepped on and then that bounces back. And it almost looks like it's crumpled at first, but then it kind of stretches and reflexes and the sun comes and it comes back. That bounce back, that's resiliency. It doesn't mean that it doesn't experience hardship. It means that it comes back. And so when we tell you oh, you've had a rough 2 weeks, we're just glad you're here. That's what we're talking about. Like, oh, we haven't seen you in a bit. Like, we've missed you. Oh, but you're back on. Like, we're just glad you're here. That's what we're doing. That's what we're saying. We're saying we're emphasizing the bounce back. And we're like, oh, like it would be faster to do XYZ, but that's not sustainable. So let's take care of ourselves in a way that's sustainable, because that creates resiliency. That's something that's a foundation that you can build on. I remember, I know she doesn't mind that I share this because I've shared this before, but one of our Fitme clients who was around for a long time, Kim, she went through breast cancer while she was a client. And I remember her doing CrossFit and doing all sorts of walking and activities like that when she very first started. And then after she had her treatment and her surgery, her mastectomy, I remember her walking to the nurse's station and back and sharing what a win that was for her on that day. Like that she was still moving her body, and that that was her win, was that walk to the nurse's station and back. That's resiliency. Like that's the like, okay, like it's going to look different in this season of healing, this season that's hard, but these habits are for real. This foundation's for real. I'm going to take care of myself no matter what that looks like. And so that's our second value, is resiliency. And then our third Fitme value is reliability. This is a new one. It actually used to be connection. We realized connection's just sort of at the core of all of this. And so instead we saw that reliability, being able to rely on ourselves, trust ourselves, have that faith and confidence in what we're doing, being able to continue to show up. And so, reliability is also for each other, for your coaching team. We want you to know that we're reliable for you and that we're going to be there. And that you can trust us. That to me is very, very important. Again, in a place where like, in fitness and nutrition, where there's not a lot of trust out there, and especially coming from like diet space, for many people, there's not a lot of trust. That's not the case here. And so for reliability, we say we'll communicate without judgment, show up fully, and push forward together. And it'll create a safe space for genuine relationships, create momentum, and we will thrive in a team atmosphere. One of the things that is so unique about what you guys are a part of is that we support each other. And reliability is a piece of that. Whether you're somebody's accountability buddy, whether you're like, hey, I'm going to check on you after this, like how we show up for each other impacts how we show up for ourselves. And so whether that is, again, being reliable for yourself, following through on the promises and commitments you keep to yourself, or knowing that other people depend on you and that we do have those genuine relationships and can create that momentum together, whether that's you with your coach or whether that's you with other people in Fitme. This is one of the most human things that, we have, and we get to share it together. And so those are our values. And I thought, it's been well over a year since we talked about what our Fitme values are. And I want you to see how they show up for you. Like as you are doing the day-to-day grind, and most of the time these coaching calls are around the day-to-day grind. Like how do we meal prep better? Like how do we get out of how do we strength train better? Like what does it mean to make our metabolism stronger? Like how do, all of those things are very practical day to day. I want you to know that these values, these priorities should show up in some way as you're going through that journey. You should feel that. We should help you feel that. But at the same time, know that this is how we're going to show up together, with realness, with resiliency, and with reliability. And so when we're like, hey, what's your little wins? We're not just like placating you. We're not like, your coach isn't just like asking you that because for funsies, like let's give you like a little, throw you a bone. No, a little win is in line with resiliency. A little win is a big deal. You said you were going to do something, you followed through on it. That's a big deal. You're more reliable for yourself. You showed up even though you didn't want to. That's resiliency. Like you told the honest truth about why things are hard. That's realness. Like you showing up as you and sharing that with us, that's realness. And so we want you to feel that as you're kind of going through your journey and you're making progress. So I just kind of want to open that up for conversation, whether it's around the Fitme values or whether or not like there's overlap. Remember, like we can have different core values in different areas of our life, right? You might have your individual core values, like the 3 or 4 things that are your personal core values. You might have family values, like maybe things that are as a family are your core values. There's probably some overlap there. There probably should be. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 or 3 of those are the same as yours. You might have core values that are different in a team setting or in your church or in your community group or in your gym. And those, you can feel those there. And then here, these can be this. So there's can be overlap. And we can, but typically when we are out of alignment with our values and when we struggle. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to open this conversation up, whether we want to talk about Fitme values or if we want to talk about our own personal values or what these mean for us on our journey. Just figured this was a good topic for tonight. Chrissy Campbell's done too much talking. And I'm watching Molly carve pumpkins. What do you guys think?
I think, am I there?
No, you're back.
Yeah. You know, I think this was such an interesting exercise each time we've done it, actually, in various areas, because I think once we specify what our values are, then it makes decisions really easy. Like it makes setting boundaries really easy because it makes the right thing for us very clear. So I think this is one of those, in some ways, really undervalued steps. But once we really decide what that is, I don't know. It's really made things a lot clearer for me.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said it that way, because sometimes we are presented with choices that we could do something and it's like, well, which one's the right one? And there are merits to both. Like there are pluses or minuses to both options. And sometimes being really connected to your core values or having thought them through can help you make decisions. So I'll give you an example from a Fitme perspective. So there are programs out there that I don't think are bad. Like, for example, 75 Hard. I have a lot of people in my life. If you've never heard of 75 Hard, it's a challenge is what it is. And it's a game that people play for 75 days straight. And they have to do 2 workouts a day. They have to do a bunch of stuff. You have to be very strict and on point for 75 days. And that's the game. I mean, very, very strict. It's hard. That's why it's called that. And is there something wrong with that? No, I don't know that there is. But like, would we do that? Question mark in Fitme. Well, the answer would be, even though there could be pluses, there could be minuses, the answer would be no. Why? Because to me, it's out of alignment with resiliency. Going full in perfect for 75 days usually has a whiplash for people. I've seen it over and over and over again. People tend to go hard the other way after they finish a 75-day Be Perfect challenge. And it is out of alignment with resiliency. It creates less of a foundation, not more in my mind. So is it a bad thing? No, it's just not what we're doing. And that's why. And so like for Molly's example, like sometimes we're presented with choices and we're like, which one should I do? And our values inform those. What else, guys? What are your other thoughts?
So a little bit along the same lines. I hope you can hear me because Paw Patrol is kind of loud.
Yeah.
But we have a family like core value that we have by our front door, and it definitely helps with decision making, and it just helps remind us of why we do certain things even when they're hard. And for me, for when I created my core values, communication and integrity are 2 of the ones that like kind of fire me up. If like how you were explaining, like what fires you up if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. Those 2, with I have poor communication, I get like kind of out of control. And I'm like, why am I so frustrated? And it's because it's so important to me. And yeah. So I think it just helps in the like daily also. And it helps to reflect if you are having an extra day where you're feeling extra irritated, extra frustrated, to really be like, what is it that is the root of this? Mm-hmm. Because then you can kind of proceed better instead of just being emotional about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to think of stepping outside of like your current moment and being like, what's going on here? It also, I think, it really can inform our goals. Like if you've never done the exercise of like thinking about what your core values are, it's going to be helpful because at the end of the day, I promise you it's tied to your goals. I promise you it's tied to the thing that's most important to you. For example, if you feel like you're missing out on things with your family because you're not feeling healthy or strong or able to keep up, but your family is one of your core values, like that would get you to your core, right? Like that is something that will make you feel frustrated. And so, but it can also be very compelling. Like it can be frustrating, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is what's important to me. This is why I'm working so hard on this goal. This is why I'm going to keep pushing forward because this is important to me. And so getting clear around that can be really helpful. And if you haven't done the exercise of like, what are your core values? I mean, if you guys are super interested in that, shoot me a message. If I get enough messages, I'll do a workshop on it. Because I've done workshops for coaches and business owners on, establishing their company core values. But if it would be helpful for us to do one on what are your individual ones, I can guide us through that. So let me know if there's interest.
I'd be interested if anybody Amy shared communication was one of her values. I'm interested in if anyone has done this before, if anyone knows their values. I know ownership is one of mine. She said communication and integrity. Ownership is one of mine. I feel like integrity might have been too. And I actually just outed myself. It's been a minute since I've looked at them. But I'm wondering if anybody's done this before.
Well, I had a third Molly and I can't remember. So
that makes me feel better.
It's written on my thing somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get them, Amy, and tell each other.
Yes, find them and revisit them. I mean, I think we should revisit them in different seasons. It's okay if they change. Sometimes they do, especially when life changes. Does anybody else know one of their core values? Like even just one of your personal core values? Like if this is violated, it pisses you off.
This is kind of a weird one, but responsiveness.
It's not a weird one. Leah, you froze, but that's not a weird. Tio, are you trying to unmute? Let me see if I can get it.
Yeah. Did I unmute?
Yeah.
Oh, one of my core values has always been and probably always will be is authenticity.
I like that one. That's a really good one. Kristen, I saw your comment to do a workshop on values. I will do that. We'll set it up.
Yes, please.
But I'm going to tell everybody in advance. And if you're listening to the replay of this and you're like, I want to come to that workshop, then you actually have to come to the workshop because it won't be something that works when you're like, oh, I'm just going to listen to that later. That's not how it works. Like a workshop on core values means we're going to actually like push pause during the thing and do some work and really think through some of this stuff. And even though like you might be able to revisit it later, like we'll actually do it live. So if we do a workshop, then I want to get as many of people there as possible that can come. Yeah, Paige says it's a good exercise to occasionally. It can be really insightful. Yeah.
I haven't done a value assessment, core value assessment I don't even remember the last time I did one.
Yeah.
But I would definitely agree with Tio that the authenticity is a big core value of mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite parts of doing a core values workshop is to see what you write down when you get to write down 10, because that's how we always start. You get to write down 10 things that you think are probably your core values. But then the real magic happens, because then you have to edit to 4. And when you have to choose, all of a sudden things start to become clear. It's in the editing process that we learn stuff about ourselves. And so it will be really fun for us all to do together. Liz, what are you cooking? I want to come over. Hold on, you're muted, I think. Let's unmute. Tell us what you're cooking.
I am making chicken tortilla soup.
I knew it was something good. I could tell. It looked good just from all of the things you were chopping up.
Smells delicious.
Oh man. It looks better than like what Molly's doing.
Oh my God.
Molly's pumpkin carving faces are the best.
Oh.
I can't see. Stop making fun of the old lady.
I was gonna say Molly's faces in general are the best.
But her pumpkin carving faces are very intense. Yes.
She's like, stop talking about me.
Listen.
This is intense work, people.
Yeah, everybody's sharing the thing. So I guess there's the target for this week is to think about what's important to you and why. Really, that's what I'm asking you to do, is think about it. Think about the things that are the most important. Do you know what your core values are? Are your goals that you've set for yourself in Fitme in alignment with your core values? And does that help you understand their importance and why you're working towards them? And then now that you know Fitme's core values and you've had that refresh on them, you know how we get to show up for each other in this space. Really, that's why I wanted to share them, is so that you know now that, if just in case you didn't know, that realness is something that we value here. Resiliency is something that we value, and reliability. And so when you show up in those ways, that is meaningful, because that's how we're going to show up for each other. And so think about your personal core values, how and if they are in alignment with your goals, why your goals are important. If your goals aren't important, probably because they're not in alignment with your values. Like if you're like, man, I'm not making any progress because I don't really care. Like your goals might not be in alignment with your values, right? So that's a really good sanity check for yourself. And maybe like in other places in your life, you could say that, like, why don't I care about work anymore? I used to care. I don't anymore. Maybe the work that you're doing is out of alignment with your values. Maybe you've had friendships that were in the past fulfilling, and then now they're not fulfilling. And that friendship, and you're like, what the hell? Maybe it's out of alignment with your core values. So this is a really good like sanity check. And if you haven't done it in a little while, just start to think about it. And then that will also prepare you. We'll do a values workshop, and we'll do it in November, sometime in November. And so that way, if you've never done this exercise before, we can do it together. Cool, guys. We'll have a phenomenal week. I'll see you all next week. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Keep up the great work. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.